Hello, Hamlin. It's a pleasure to see you here
Hi.
today. I'm really
Hi,
looking
Jenny.
I I'm really looking forward to our conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion, and resilience. And how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, you know. I'm told I'm a fairly resilient person. There's actually a tool that measures your level of resilience, and a colleague of mine, she uses it in organization development and coaching. So, as being a curious mind type person, I said, well, I'd like to see how resilient I am. She said, okay. She put me through the process. And turns out I'm fairly resilient. I didn't really think I was.
Ah,
But we can certainly talk about what are the elements, what are some of the characteristics of being resilient, because I think you really have to be, especially in today's time, right? Especially doing this work, you
mm,
really have to be resilient. And so I'm doing okay. I'm
good.
okay. I'm tired, but I'm okay.
I'm really pleased to hear that. And I'm also, yeah, it's good that you can measure your resilience. I like the fact that you were surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm doing this
Yeah.
work, you really have to be resilient. So I'm sure you've been building it over the years. I've been
Yeah.
following your work for a little while now, and especially your contributions around diversity, equity, and inclusion and resilience. And your
Thank you.
insights are very inspiring. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for them. So
Thank you.
today,
Thank you.
no problem. Today, I'd like to just delve a little deeper into some of the topics that I've seen you discuss, and understand how these they can intersect with our professional and our personal lives. But to start, I'd like you to share a little bit about your journey in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What motivated you to focus on this area?
Well, I think a deep curiosity. Let me say that, okay? A deep curiosity about why things are the way they are, to put it bluntly. And DiversaPro, we started the company almost 27 years ago, really, in a way, 25 years ago. But I've been doing this work, it seems, for most of my life.
Mm,
As a child of an immigrant coming to Canada, there was always a sense here of understanding my place in it
mm,
and how I show up. And so my motivation really comes from the work I did in media as a journalist, and as a reporter, as a on-air reporter, producer, a newsreader, investigative reporter, and producer. All of those things I think have really informed my curiosity about differences. And so for me, it's always been about finding out why
mm.
and then using the what to sort of explore all of that to finding out the why. And so that's what's motivated me. And also there's a real deep um, you know, desire for fairness, honestly, for fairness for everyone. And it's and so when I talk about EDI, the acronym that we use is IDEA:
Mm,
inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism.
mm,
You need to
mm,
talk about if you want to tackle racism, you can't call it belonging. You
mm,
can't call it whatever phrase that people are comfortable with. I think you need to name it. And so for me, racism, whether it's anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Asian racism, um, we need to put that as part of the conversation doing this work.
Thank you. I love that acronym idea. That sounds, yeah, brilliant. And will give people ideas and connects with this idea of curiosity.
Yeah.
And I admire that curiosity in you because some people may have had similar experiences as they started out in the world and become angry or despondent or felt like a victim. But you've engaged with a curious mind, and as a result, it enables you to be hopeful and to take action, which is so important in this space. So thank you for telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I know you work with lots of organizations and communities. The work you're doing is far reaching. What are the most significant challenges organizations or communities face when trying to implement idea initiatives? I'm going to call them now instead of instead of DEI idea initiatives.
Yeah. Well, I think those the challenges I think of they've changed over time. I think they've morphed over time.
Mm,
In the early days of doing this work, I think you'd probably agree as well. And that there was a whole thing about the conversation was really around what's the business case for diversity.
mm,
Remember that?
yes, yeah.
Organizational leaders want to know, so why should we do it? What's the business case for it?
Mm,
And I think we've moved on from this now in many ways because of all the research that's out there to show that diverse teams can be much more productive than
mm,
monocultural teams.
mm,
Okay, I don't think anyone will argue that. What I think has happened now is, especially coming out of the George Floyd moment, okay, or the movement, the
mm,
Black Lives Matter movement, and all of those things that were going on a few years ago. Organizational leaders are now asking the bigger question about, okay, what? What do I need to do? They need to build their own capacity. So the big challenge I think that organizations are facing right now is making making resources available to do the work, okay,
mm,
and to hold themselves accountable for that. And I think long gone are those, performative kind of measures that we saw so much during the Black Lives Matter, the height of it. I mean, George Floyd was murdered. Organizations and especially employees are asking their leaders to be less than performative.
mm,
Okay. And the challenge I think that leaders have right now is they need to step up. They need to step up. They need to be more accountable. And it's more than just listening anymore.
mm,
People are saying, okay, you've listened. Now you need to start doing and acting and doing something about it in terms of what you're hearing. That's the big challenge I think organizations are facing right now.
mm,
They have to deliver. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of listening.
mm.
What are you going to do? And that's the challenge I think that organizations are facing right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting that what you're saying, and I guess I'm thinking about it in a number of ways. I'm thinking that some organizations are further on than others, and some might still be
Yeah.
searching for the business case. I think
Yeah.
that the business case might also um, be the thing that helps people realize that any rolling back they've done has damaged their business. So those who were performative, even though it was performative, at least it was something. When they roll back from that, I think they're going to realize how it impacts their bottom line. So I think there's something around that. But
I
what you're
agree.
speaking to at the heart is actually this is time to lead. This is about
It
leadership.
is.
This is the
It totally.
core. Yeah, in a way, we don't even have to call it idea. We call this actually be a good leader, step up and do the things that you're meant to do. But I
Exactly.
know for you, you talk about resilience as a key element of all of this, don't you? And where
Yeah.
does the resilience come in, either when we talk about idea or when we talk about leadership? Tell me more about the importance of that.
Well, I mean, being resilient, it's it's such a well, we don't use the word often enough.
Mm,
Especially in this work. It's certainly being tough, being able to uh, not just go with the flow, but to be very strategic about all of that, and there's these characteristics of resilience, right? That whole notion of being positivity. That's a positiveness that I think you need to have, the positivity. Resilient individuals tend to find hope and possibility in the midst of really challenging and difficult situations, right? So I think that's another characteristic of resilience. This particular tool that my colleague uses, and I've been using it now with a number of organizations and teams, especially. They talk about these resilient muscles
mm, mm,
you need to have. And depending on this different muscles for different situations. Not all the muscles can be used all at the same time, but positivity is one muscle. Another muscle is confidence.
mm,
Confidence uh, uh, resilient individuals sort of recognize and use their skills and abilities. There's a certain confidence that they may have. There's also prioritizing, right? You need to prioritize and really paying attention to what's important. We can get so distracted by what's going on around us doing this work as leaders and as practitioners. Sometimes we fail to focus on what's important. Prioritizing is really, really important. And creativity is another muscle. All
Mm.
right. We need to really come up with a range of possibilities and options to do the work. And especially in today's climate of the anti-DI, EDI noise that's emerging, we need to become more creative in terms of how we do our work and the type of processes or systems that we're using to get the work done. That goes for leaders, it goes for practitioners as well. And
Yeah.
also in your networks, that whole connection that we have, we got to reach out to others for help and support. We can't do it alone. Leaders must understand they cannot do this alone. They need to have a network, whether it's internal to the organization or even external to the organization. So that connection is really, really important. And also being really structured, you got to be very disciplined in terms of how you go about these approaches that you're doing. That's another muscle that you have to use. And finally, I love this one, experimentation, right?
Mm.
Experiment, try new things, try different approaches, new strategies. Not everything is going to work all the time for every situation. So be open to the possibilities of trying some new approaches and new things. You can do all of those things. That's being resilient, okay? And we need to become that even more so in today's climate of change. Tremendous change has taken place, especially around the anti-DEI environment that we're all facing right now here in Canada, in the United States, and in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I guess perhaps people don't focus on those areas. I know that a lot of the time when I speak to leaders, they're often looking for someone to just give them the answers. If you tell me to do A, B, and C, I'll do it. And then I'll be, then I'll be anti-racist, then I'll be
Yeah,
inclusive.
yeah,
And I guess your strategy, your approach is saying, yeah, we can give you some tools, but you need those resilience muscles to be able to get those tools out in the first place.
yeah.
To
You
be
need you need to do the work. They need to do the
Yeah,
work, you
yeah,
know?
to build your
Yeah,
confidence, to be brave and bold in those different situations, to try something different that might actually fail, but actually could succeed, or you could learn something from it.
yeah,
Um,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, so I see how important this is, building those resilience muscles. And I see why it's important with DEI because it's, in a way, territory that we haven't really trodden. We haven't solved it. We haven't
Mm,
solved it. So therefore, we don't know what the answer is. So we're
no,
really working through ways to find the answer. And in that space, we need more resilience than we might do if we could be sure that A and B would equal C.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and there's and there's also, there's a lot of uncertainty. I
Mm,
mean, I think sometimes we forget that, diversity ultimately is about people. It's
mm,
about people. And people have all their foibles.
mm,
People can be unpredictable.
mm,
Engaging with people can be unpredictable. And I think sometimes we have to put ourselves in a situation where we plan for the unpredictability of it, you
mm,
know? And I think leaders don't do enough of that. The pushback that leaders will get on DEI strategies or initiatives within organizations, it is going to come.
mm,
It may come in small ways or it may come in large ways, but there. Do you have a plan to deal with the resistance?
mm, mm,
Okay. And
mm,
and are you listening to them? And it's not to shut down resistance. I mean, I'm a firm believer that you need to build as large a tent as possible,
mm.
so everybody should be invited.
Yes.
Not everybody may want to come into the tent,
Mm,
but build that tent large enough so to accommodate as many voices, even those who may disagree.
yes.
You
Yeah.
see, and that's really uncomfortable for folks,
Yeah.
because you don't want to live in an echo chamber.
Mm,
And I think if we really want to be successful in creating inclusive and equitable organizations, we need to be listening to some of those dissenting voices, as
mm,
painful as it could be, or as it may be for you. So
mm,
build a larger tent as you can to
mm,
invite as many people in, and they may choose to stay outside the tent.
Yes.
But at least you've created the environment to allow them to come in to have these brave conversations.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel that there is an evolving right now where those conversations are more important than ever. This idea, we've had enough time, I think, of it feeling very divisive, where it feels like, oh, you're cancelled because you haven't agreed or you've said the wrong thing.
Right.
And I think we need to move into a space where let's talk this through. Let's understand each other. Let's hear each other, both perspectives, and let's see because there must be some commonality. There must be some sense making that we can do as human beings in the same space.
Yeah, yeah. And, the word you use, that sense making. Um,
Mm,
I think the foundational work for this stuff is building the capacity to to uh, to to more effectively make sense of cultural
mm,
differences. And this is where intercultural competence development comes in.
mm,
So
mm,
the tool that we use is the intercultural development inventory.
mm, mm,
And we can assess how an individual's, how they are making sense of cultural differences. How are they navigating across cultural differences? And typically what we find is, despite people saying and thinking that they're really curious about differences,
mm.
they tend to minimize. They
Yes.
tend to go to that place of commonality,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with finding common
mm,
ground, but
mm,
if that's where you go and that's where you stay,
mm,
you're not paying attention to the differences. And so
mm.
we see that in organizations. That's the challenge, to
Yeah.
move from minimization through to the acceptance mindset. And the acceptance mindset is that place of curiosity, recognizing differences.
Mm,
Okay. You may struggle. That analysis paralysis could very well take in as you're trying to make sense of all of this, but
mm.
at least you're struggling with it,
Yes.
opposed to simply just going to that common place, common ground. We're
Mm,
all the same. We're colorblind,
yeah.
those sorts of things. You want to
Mm,
move beyond that and move to that place of curiosity, that place of
absolutely.
acceptance on the intercultural development inventory. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about minimization because I think this is really interesting.
Uh,
Absolutely. I think there's one thing which is, oh, it doesn't matter whether you're red, green, blue, or whatever, we're all the same. That's one level of it. But there are some, I think, more nuanced ways of when people look at this and they don't realize that they're minimizing. And it could be whether you're from a marginalized group or whether you're from the majority group. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of research has been done through the intercultural development inventory that
Mm,
was really originally emerged out of the work done by Dr. Milton Bennett around the uh, the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity, and Mitch Hammer developed the IDI, and minimization is that place where you go where you're looking for commonalities. You try to make sense of all the differences that's around you
mm,
and you try to and you minimize. But minimization can also, play itself out with folks who are marginalized,
mm,
folks who may perceive themselves to be part of the non-dominant culture. Will actually minimize themselves, will minimize their differences in order to fit in.
mm,
Okay? And I
mhm.
see that. I see that whether it's women in an all-male environment or a racialized person in a mostly white environment, we will
Mm,
minimize ourselves in order to fit in. So you don't want to make waves. It's a
mm,
coping strategy. All right.
mm,
On
mm,
the other hand, someone from the dominant culture, whether it's a man or a white man or a white woman, could very well minimize the privileges that they're bringing to that situation, assuming that everybody has access to those privileges.
yes,
That's
absolutely.
another form of minimization.
Mm,
Minimization can stop you in your tracks to move forward,
mm,
but you at least have to recognize it. Now, there are times when you need to minimize. There are
mm,
times you need to say, hey, let's get on the same page.
mm,
That's fine. But
mm,
know why you're doing it in
mm.
order to move to that place of curiosity. You see? So minimization is a very powerful and very common mindset that
Yes.
people will bring to making sense of cultural differences.
I think people listening will have had a light bulb moment there, just a moment where they think, I didn't
When
have
was
a
that?
name
I
for this.
minimized. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a comment, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't realize I was experiencing it or I was doing it. Let me find out more about this. So I think you've given so many insights that have been so helpful, really thinking about this idea of resilience and the fact that we need to step back, build our resilience, I think, to go forward. That's what I'm hearing from you. Actually, if you haven't built these qualities within yourself, how on earth can you drive anything forward? How can you lead? How can you drive diversity, equity, inclusion forward without having built that resilience in yourself?
Yeah,
And then you can take other people with you, and you can come at it from a place of hopefulness, as you've mentioned. And then this idea of, yeah, sometimes we're being so positive, we think we're being so positive that we end up minimizing, or we end up trying to really fit in environments where we take away the essence of the great things that we bring. And how
that's
can
right.
we think about?
Exactly. And who we are.
Yes,
We
yeah,
are,
yeah.
and I think it's important. I mean, I always stress to leaders, my goal is to help them to become culturally adaptive.
Mm,
Okay. And our coaching program is really built around it. It's called the Culturally Adaptive Leader Program.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
And we've identified these six attributes that identifies the culturally adaptive leader. All
mm,
right.
mm.
Obviously, one of them is being a lifelong learner. All
Yes.
right.
Mm,
The other one is be aware of how you're engaging with cultural differences, but also being aware how others are engaging with cultural differences. All right.
mm,
And another attribute is vulnerability,
mm, mm,
true vulnerability. That ability to step back
mm,
and to say, you know what? I really don't know the answer to that question. But you know something? Maybe you and I working together can go find out.
mm. Fantastic.
Through vulnerability. So those are the attributes I really try to instill in leaders, especially doing this work, to become a culturally adaptive leader. That's what we need. That's what we need, especially today.
Yes, especially today. And I think this will be a breath of fresh air to many people who are looking to be re-energized, build their resilience, and keep moving forward. I think it's been so helpful. How can people get in touch with you, Hamlin? What's the best way?
Well, just go to the website,
Okay.
diversipro.com, and they can communicate with me directly. And take a look at our website, take a look at the services that we offer. Always happy to build up my network. That's part of my
Mm,
own resilience, right?
mm, mm.
I'm always trying to do that. And we may not always agree, but I always learn. I always learn. Connecting with you. And our relationship started, with you writing that piece you did, and we
Yes.
put it in our newsletter, and we've continued this kind of relationship. I'm so glad we made that connection. I think that's the key to all of this, I think.
Mm,
I'm a firm believer in collaboration, all
mhm.
right? Because I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of stuff in my head, but I know you have a lot of great stuff in your head as well. And so I always try to tap into that. So feel free. I hope people can reach out, and I'd love to connect with people, with folks. I really would.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your over 25 years of wisdom. We only scratched the surface of how much Hamlin knows and what he does and the impact that he makes. So I really encourage you to look him up, explore what he does, get in touch with him. And thank you so much, Hamlin. I hope this is helping with your resilience.
Okay,
And please keep doing the amazing work you're doing. Thank you.
great. Good. Well, thank you for the conversation. Really appreciate it, Jenny. Really do.
No problem.